Sometimes you're hunting mule deer and you get fresh snow and the lights coming on and the image of like a mule deer and they're dark colored, and to see that thing moving across that fresh snow, it looks like an apparition. It's just like, it's a magical, magical image to me.
I'm Steven Ranella. To me, hunting isn't only about the pursuit of an animal. It's about who we are and what we're made of. I live to hunt and hunt to live. I am a meat eater. This is not your typical episode of MeatEater. Instead, it's more of a collection of memories and observations about a critter that brings me endless amounts of joy and suffering.
Oh, man. One of my primary hunting goals is that I would someday get like a mega mule deer, you know?
While I'm primarily an unapologetic meat hunter, I'll admit that I have a terrible lust for a giant mule deer. The kind that you'd hang on your wall and that anyone who walked into your house would look at and say, damn, dude, that is a nice mule.
Big old 5-year-old snaggletooth giant monster buck, the one I'm ultimately after.
Why do we fall in love with the idea of a big something or another? A big bear, a big whitetail, a big elk. Sure, there's an element of bragging rights mixed in.
Next year, dude. I'm gonna shoot the rankest, nastiest buck, and I'm just gonna like, just eat it and smile, man.
But there's something deeper going on as well. Genuine affection, even love for the species that we most desire. For me, without a doubt, that's mule deer. The mule deer is a North American original. Our current understanding is that this animal evolved toward the end of the Ice Age as female white-tailed deer from the east bred with male black-tailed deer from the west. This created a hybridized species near the Rocky Mountains that would come to be known as the mule deer, making them one of the newest species of big game on the continent. Every year, I hunt muleys in the rut, usually in Montana, and always with the intention of getting a big smoker. But this year, I chose to hunt public land in southwest Colorado, which is the muley capital of the West, and to do it before the rut. I'm joined by my fellow mule deer enthusiast, Nate Archibald.
We can be on top in 5 minutes.
And in many ways, this hunt will epitomize all the highs and lows that come with chasing this beautiful, often frustrating species. On the first morning of our hunt, we head out bright and early to get the lay of the land.
That's a buck out front. That's a good buck.
One of my favorite things about hunting mule deer is the terrain they live in. As opposed to whitetails, which are extreme homebodies, mule deer need big spaces. There's a herd in western Wyoming that migrates 500 miles every year between its summer range and its winter range, making it the longest migration of any land mammal in the lower 48. As a result, mule deer can be found thriving in a wide range of environments that are suitable to whatever season it happens to be, from high alpine basins to timbered ridgelines to scrub desert lowlands. All of it is beautiful, most of it is wild.
But it's the kind of place where you really could, find that, like, public land mule deer of your dreams.
Hunting mule deer on public land has a real egalitarian feel to it. As opposed to buying your way onto some farmer's land and stalking a buck with no competition, out here, anybody can take a shot at a prize buck as long as you've got the skill to find one and the patience to track him down. But the downside of public land is that everybody can take a shot at your dream deer. Sometimes there's so much orange out there, it looks like a giant pumpkin patch.
Look at that deer running right between that dude and his truck. Guy's like, you idiot. You couldn't possibly have a hunt plan. And he's probably up there going like, those idiots, they couldn't possibly have a hunt plan. I know.
You can really find some solid muley hunting by hitting the trail and getting away from the competition. Do whatever it takes. A little boot leather, a little elbow grease, some get up and go, maybe even a couple pack llamas to help you access those hard to reach spots. These things all go a long way when you're hell-bent on going after that big old monster buck of your dreams. One of the things that keeps mule deer and those of us who hunt them on the move is their diet. In the summer, mule deer will stick to grazing all the lush green vegetation down low. But as the winter comes on and the snow starts piling up, mule deer will often move on to the one plant that doesn't get buried, sagebrush. Even under a heavy snowpack, mule deer can usually still access the tops of the sagebrush. And that's why the mule deer and sage flats are intertwined.
And that flat is just alive with does.
It is.
I mean, it's like kind of unbelievable how many have come through there.
There's a lot in there. When this rut starts, you can only imagine what it's going to be like. Because there's a lot of does to fancy.
This would be a good time to talk about the rut. Mule deer usually breed in the second half of November. If I could pick one day every year to hunt mule deer, when you're likely to see the most rut activity, it would be November 22. It's kind of like being in a bar in Anchorage, Alaska at closing time. A lot of competitive dudes with dwindling options. But here in Colorado, we're a couple weeks early, and the rut is clearly not in full swing. We keep seeing doe after doe after doe, but they're just not getting trailed by bucks. They're still playing it safe.
When I find the one I'm after, once I get like
You're going to turn into a bird watcher?
yeah, that's on.
In a hunt like this, you've got a lot of time to think. One thing I think about is what exactly is a trophy. I like to say that I've never actually seen the buck that I'm after, meaning I haven't laid eyes on a living mule deer that's as big as the one I'd ultimately like to see resting on a shelf in my house. Realistically though, I think of a trophy as being, at least for me, a personal best. I'm always after one that's a little bigger than the biggest one I've gotten so far. It's not something I can judge in numbers of inches of antlers. Instead, it's something that, when I see it, I'll know it. Mule deer hunting is its own thing. It requires its own sets of tricks and strategies. You need to find that perfect balance between walking and exploration and sitting and glassing. The migratory quality of the animals, particularly during seasonal changes, makes it even more difficult. It's hard to pattern animals that sometimes refuse to follow a pattern. Just because you see some buck disappear down into a coulee to bed down doesn't mean he's gonna do the same thing the next day. By then, he might be over the next hillside, or he might be 8 miles away. So you really have to read the entire landscape to get a sense of where you might find that animal. And that often means getting up high. Once you've gotten into the best high glassing spot you can find, you have to make yourself have the patience to sit and to really study your surroundings.
That's something you learn from hunting like this. Is like, God bless them. 95% of hunters would come and go. Look how long we stared at that deer before we saw that deer.
An hour isn't really enough. Even 2 hours is on the light side. And when you're hunting mule deer in new country, you want to work hard to ascertain what exactly it is that's drawing deer into places where you're seeing them. Is it a particular type of feed, a particular type of cover, a particular quality of light or shade? At the same time, you're trying to anticipate the movements of other hunters and then get away from the crowds in hopes of finding deer that might have been pushed into those out-of-the-way pockets as they search for refuge and safety.
Some boot tracks of a couple different vintages right here. It's like some guy thought the same thing I'm thinking. But this guy's my brother. I mean, not my actual brothers, Matt and Dan, just like a brother in spirit up here wandering around the ridges.
With all these tracks around, I'm hoping there's still some deer left for me.
I bet that's what he's packing out yesterday.
Yeah, so that means maybe this hasn't been hunted. I'm so ridiculously jealous of whoever killed that buck, because it's such a cool place to kill a buck. If I found that guy, I would strangle him, and I'd buy him a beer. right by him a beer and strangle him. Not sure.
Every mule deer hunt starts out with the hope that this is gonna be the time, that I'll hike into some lonely corner of public land and glass up the monstrous pig of a mule deer that I dream about. And on every hunt, there comes a moment when my dreams begin to fall into alignment with reality. It's not a sudden thing, but gradually, those smaller bucks start to look a little more medium, and those medium bucks start to look pretty darn big. This hunt is no different. As day 3 turns into day 4,
This is ridiculous, man.
and that turns into day 5, I start questioning what it was that I was after out here in the first place.
I'm getting so frustrated, man. Just hunting my guts out, you know? Just glass and glass and glass and glass. Bucks are obviously not concerned about those yet. Oh, I hate hunting. It's like, to like hunting is like such a curse, man. Be better to just like doing something different. Try to think of something you can do where you don't have to worry about it not working out. I guess video games, they usually work out probably pretty good. Just takes one. Just takes one.
A buddy of mine in Alaska always says, there are things that are fun while you're doing them, and there are things that are fun to remember. If I just came down here and tagged out on a big old buck right away, I wouldn't be talking about it in 20 years. It's day 7 of my annual quixotic quest for a monster muley, and while I think we have our best chance yet of finding some big bucks, I'm also starting to get practical.
This is our last morning, so I got like a half day to hunt. This could turn into a meat hunt real quick. Yes, it can.
If you've watched me hunt mule deer before on this show, you know that this isn't my first time in this situation.
It's been a long time. I don't know where those deer are now.
At this point, my annual, very short but very annual search for a big monster muley. Now, this is turning into a meat hunt.
Well, we shoot a doe.
Well, yeah, but you don't know how old that doe is.
No, apparently not.
That's why if you shoot a little forky, you know he's a year and a half old.
I like the idea of shooting a forky.
The one way to guarantee he's young is, you know,
Yeah.
instead of like,
That's right, it's forky time.
That back deer's a buck.
Yeah, that back one's a buck.
These are the kind of younger bucks I'll probably have to settle for, though I hate to use the word settle.
Another buck by itself.
But they're still not giving me any good shots. We head farther along the ridge, trying not to break the skyline and spook any deer we haven't seen yet.
Okay, I'm not shooting yet, but I got too much brush in the way.
On muleys, I aim just about how I aim on all big game, back behind the shoulder to avoid wasted meat.
How's he still going?
He dropped.
Yeah.
He's down.
My quest for the monster muley goes on, but in the end, I can't complain.
Hey,
Got a buck.
good work.
I got what will be a good eating buck, and I worked hard for him. That's reward enough for me.
Man, we covered some ground looking for these guys.
The only real difference that stands out about gutting and butchering a muley is the tarsal gland that gives off a bit of a musk. They're worse than whitetail glands. It needs to be removed with care. After that, it's like butchering any other hooved mammal.
When I'm doing these, I'll cut both sides of the pelvis ridge. See, and I pull that pelvis ridge out, then everything comes out of there. Clean as a whistle. Of the different North American deer species and subspecies, mule deer is considered the gamiest. They do have a stronger taste.
A lot of people complain about the gamey taste of mule deer. To them, I say this: get over it.
In my mind, I would say that mule deer is a quality meat. You know, any aversion I had to gamey meat, I went in that door and then came out the other side. It just doesn't bother me anymore. If you're shooting just for meat quality, you don't care about decorating your home with antlers or emailing sweet buck photos to your friends, I would say go out and shoot a 1.5-year-old buck. Shoot a spike or a forky. When you see that spike, or you see that little fork, you know how old that thing is. That thing's 1.5 years old, he's gonna be good. He's not gonna have any odor to him. So if you want meat, shoot spikes and forkies.
This buck looks to be probably 2.5 years old. Still a very good eating age, but I won't know for sure until I get him on the grill. It's time to head back to camp and find out. I meet back up with Nate at camp to start working on our muley burgers.
That looks good.
The tenderloin would be the best meat for these burgers, but I'm saving that to grill at home. Instead, I'm using the neck meat, which is also tasty, but requires a lot of chopping.
You're kind of like slicing it, crushing it, just generally trying to mutilate it with a knife. I'm gonna use deer suet or venison suet, just to give it a little body and help bind it together. Those are gonna be good.
And
That's a very good burger.
you don't get any pressure now, like 3 hours, you pound a burger.
But I plan to get a lot more than burgers out of this critter. There's a ton of great meat on a mule deer, especially if you're willing to use the whole animal. To name a few, you can create amazing meals from the back legs.
This is a fennel-based dry rub, and this is gonna sound like a bold statement, but this is the best way I've ever had venison leg in my life. I'm not kidding you.
The shoulder.
Making sausage is as important to hunting as it is to be able to like, shoot your gun. It's as much fun as well.
The head.
Sizzling.
Is that the head?
Yes, sir. Just grab that, some of that deer jowls.
That's delicious.
Testicles.
You really don't get more primal than a testicle in my mind. The only way I've ever cooked these from game is in butter. So do like butter balls, butternut, and a little red hot's good.
And loin.
People will like this. People that come from Thanksgiving, man, they don't want ruddy bucks. I mean, I like to look at them on the wall, but people don't want to eat them for Thanksgiving. Big old 5-year-old snaggletooth giant monster buck, the one I'm ultimately after.
I sometimes have honest moments where I'm willing to admit that my desire for a truly magnificent public land mule deer is likely to go unfulfilled. I'm comfortable not getting a big mule deer so long as I know that there are big mule deer out there to be gotten. But what I'm not okay with is the idea that I can't get a big mule deer because we as a nation have screwed things up so bad that there are no longer any mule deer left. As a guy who loves these animals, as well as wide open spaces, I say we got an obligation to preserve the mule deer by preserving the innately important things that it needs to stay alive. I'm reminded of an essay written by a favorite writer of mine, Thomas McGuane, who is imagining a conversation between a hunter and a non-hunter. The non-hunter asks, "Why do deer have to die for you? Would you die for deer?" The hunter's reply is simple: "If it came to that,